Buenos nachos and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode we're going to be revisiting the SEGA Chihiro boards, also known as the Xbox Arcade, SEGA Chihiro, or Xbox Chihiro arcade boards. In our previous video we had determined that the GPU had failed on this console, even though the readings were pretty much up to snuff with what you'd expect on a good console. We probably could have performed some live voltage checks in order to rule out any other component on the board being faulty, though I think it's pretty safe to say that the GPU is most likely the culprit for these particular boards, just because that's what the internet says. Without further ado, let's go ahead and prep this board for its voyage over to the rework machine. First thing to do is, of course, to remove this custom looking fan here. And it would appear that someone has put some adhesive on this clamp assembly. I mean, someone really wanted to make sure that this thing did not come off. Well, we're gonna have to use some hot air to remove this. CPU's wiggly. Came off like nothing. I have a feeling this thing is quite literally baked on. See if we can remove this without taking the GPU with it. There we go. Doesn't look too bad. Of course, we won't know how bad it is until we remove this chip. So let's go ahead and continue to remove the remainder of this harness. And that thing sure is noisy. And one final one. We'll probably clean off the CPU, but I think the GPU I'm just going to clean up a little bit. That way our vacuum tool doesn't have a tough time pulling the chip off. Yeah, you know what, we'll just go ahead and clean off the whole thing, at least as best we can. Hopefully we don't need to use the bottle of piss, but we do have it right here just in case. Yeah, someone has definitely replaced the thermal paste in the past. I kind of figured as much because it did not look like what Microsoft had put on these consoles. And it looks like we're dealing with an X-GPU-S. No piss required this time, but we will clean up the area around the GPU. And now off to the rework machine. We're going to clean this area up and prep it for the new GPU.
Do you have a console in need of repair or modification? Do you not have a console? Don't fret, we offer repairs and upgrades as well as refurbished ones. For more information, fill out the contact form on our website, nixelectronics.com.
Whatever that brown gunk was, definitely didn't look too good in here. It's possible someone may have tried to reflow this thing in the past. Yeah, everything looks pretty good. Guess we're ready to put the new GPU on. Now we can begin the reattachment process. We'll let this thing finish, and we'll see you back at the workbench. So it does indeed look like someone tried to reflow this GPU, hence the nasty looking flux that we saw on the board, and of course now that we're seeing on this GPU here. Of course, I highly doubt a reflow would have cut it, fixed the issues this console is experiencing, especially if the GPU is indeed toast. Alright, and we now have our GPU installed onto this console here. So it is a replacement GPU. We'll go ahead and attach our mod chip in our front panel, of course, because we're going to need some buttons to power this thing on. And of course, we're going to put some thermal paste on here because, well, the GPU is toast prior and we don't want that to happen again. Should be putting the good stuff on, but we're going to put this stuff on as it's a nice temporary solution, and that should do for now. Trying to zoom out all the way again, huh? Bad. The momentous of truth. Looks like we're still fragging. I decided to take a break from working on this Chihiro console until a proper power cable could arrive, which, as you can see right here, one has, and we have our power supply. Anyway, long story short, I took off the GPU that I had installed on there, replaced it with one that I took off of another console, reballed that one, and installed it on this. Having said all of that, let's go ahead and try and power this thing on. So we're going to go ahead and hit the power, and we'll see what happens. So I already have it hooked up to the AV to HDMI to the TV. It was working a second ago. Alright, this is the part that sucked, because I remember I had to wait a couple of minutes before I could power it on again. Alright, let's see what happens here. I don't expect anything to appear on screen quite yet, just because I don't have the correct cables hooked up. I don't want to chance any kind of communication issue or error code. We'll swap out the cable here in a second. And look at that. Picture's a little screwed up. Could be because of the cable setup, or we have failing capacitors in this unit. But there you are. Chihiro, error 26, media board malfunctioning. All right, we'll go ahead and shut this thing down because I don't have a fan on that GPU. I just want to say thank you to one of the commenters in the previous YouTube video. The individual had suggested that I either purchase or build one of these cables and hook it up to a computer power supply. That seemed to be one of the key components missing here. Of course, also others had suggested I just try and power this thing on with all of the components instead of trying to power it on the manual way. Is it possible to boot this console without all the Sega hardware using maybe a debug BIOS? Or are there also modifications that need to be performed to the board in order to get a debug BIOS to boot? Well, hopefully someone with a kind enough soul will leave that information down in the comments. I've checked in forums and a couple of Discord channels, and I'm not entirely sure that that information will apply to this unit right here, because it's not the later version of the Sega Chihiro console. It's pretty much, I guess, like the first version that ever came out. At least that's what I gather from what I'm seeing here. Anyway, we finally got this thing to boot. If you found this video helpful or useful, please remember to leave us a like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Until next time.